The hose snaked through her garden like a weapon, water gushing into her prized roses as Karen Whitmore cranked the valve with trembling hands. "It's too blue." She screamed across the fence, her voice cracking with the kind of rage that comes from years of unchecked entitlement. Pools aren't supposed to be that color. Marcus Chen stood frozen on his deck, watching his neighbor, a woman he'd tried to be civil with for 3 years, attempt to drain his $40,000 custom pool in broad daylight. But what Karen didn't know was that Marcus had installed cameras everywhere. After the last incident, and what Marcus didn't know was that Karen's husband had just filed for divorce. Her job was hanging by a thread, and she was about to lose everything. The blue water swirled down the drain like her sanity, and in 20 minutes, both their lives, Marcus Chen, had always believed in the power of small gestures. When he'd moved into the pristine suburban neighborhood of Willowbrook Heights 3 years ago, he'd introduced himself to every neighbor with homemade cookies and a genuine smile. Most had welcomed him warmly, all except Karen Whitmore, who lived in the colonial house directly behind his modern glass and steel home. The morning of September 15th started like any other. Marcus stepped onto his back deck with his coffee, breathing in the crisp autumn air as he admired the centerpiece of his backyard, a stunning infinity pool that seemed to spill into the horizon. The water was a brilliant azure, almost supernatural in its vibrancy, thanks to the specialized mineral system he'd had installed. It had cost him a fortune, but after years of grinding as a software engineer, he'd finally achieved his dream home. "That color is completely inappropriate." The voice shattered the morning peace like a brick through glass. Marcus nearly dropped his mug as he turned to see Karen Whitmore standing at their shared fence, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her features into a permanent scowl. She wore a pink tracksuit that somehow managed to look both expensive and cheap at the same time. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus called back, genuinely confused. "Your pool?" Karen jabbed a manicured finger toward the water. "That blue is completely unnatural. It's disrupting the aesthetic of the entire neighborhood." Marcus blinked. In 3 years of living next to Karen, he'd dealt with her complaints about everything, from the height of his grass to the color of his mailbox. But this was a new level of absurdity. "Karen, it's just pool water. The minerals make it—" "I don't care about your minerals," she shrieked, her voice climbing to a pitch that made several birds flee from nearby trees. "I've been trying to sell my house for 6 months, and every potential buyer asks about that gaudy blue monstrosity. Do you know how much money you're costing me?" The pieces clicked together. Marcus had noticed the for sale sign in Karen's yard. Along with the steady stream of real estate agents and potential buyers, what he hadn't realized was that somehow, in Karen's twisted logic, his pool had become the villain in her story. "Look, I understand you're frustrated about the sale," but frustrated. Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I'm beyond frustrated, Marcus. I'm ruined. My husband left me, my job is hanging by a thread, and now I can't even sell my house because of your ridiculous pool." The raw pain in her voice caught Marcus off guard. For a moment, he saw past the entitled exterior to something desperate and broken underneath. He'd always known Karen was difficult, but he'd never suspected she was fighting battles this big. "I'm sorry to hear about your troubles," he said carefully. "But Karen, my pool is completely legal. I got all the permits, followed all the regulations. Legal doesn't mean right," she snapped, the vulnerability disappearing as quickly as it had emerged. "There are standards in this neighborhood, Marcus, standards that people like you wouldn't understand." The comment hit like a slap. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "People like me, you know what I mean?" Karen's eyes glittered with something ugly. "You come in here with your tech money and your flashy house, thinking you can do whatever you want. But this is an established community with established values. Established values like respecting your neighbor's property. Don't lecture me." "About property values," Karen's voice cracked like a whip. "I've lived here for 15 years. I've put blood, sweat, and tears into this house, and I'm not going to let some newcomer destroy everything I've built." Marcus set down his coffee mug with deliberate precision. "Karen, I've tried to be a good neighbor. I've tolerated your complaints. I've adjusted my sprinkler system when you said it was hitting your car. I even changed my outdoor lighting when you said it was too bright. but I will not change my pool because you don't like the color. Karen's smile was sharp as a blade. We'll see about that. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning breeze. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've had enough of your selfishness, Karen said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more menacing than her screaming. I've been too nice, too accommodating, but I'm done being the victim in my own neighborhood. She turned and stalked toward her house, leaving Marcus staring after her with a growing sense of unease. In 3 years, he'd learned to read Karen's moods like weather patterns. This wasn't just another tantrum. This was something else entirely. 2 hours later, Marcus was in his home office when he heard the sound of running water. At first, he dismissed it maybe Karen was watering her garden, but the sound persisted, growing stronger. And something about it made his stomach clench with dread. He walked to his back window and froze. Karen was in his backyard. She'd somehow gotten through or around their shared fence and was standing beside his pool with a heavy-duty sump pump, its thick hose snaking across his lawn toward the storm drain. The brilliant blue water was rushing out in a torrent, the level dropping visibly as he watched. What the hell? Marcus burst through his back door, his voice carrying across the yard. Karen, what are you doing? She looked up at him with wild eyes, her perfect hair disheveled, her tracksuit stained with pool water. I'm fixing the problem, she shouted over the sound of the pump. If you won't listen to reason, I'll take matters into my own hands. That's my property. You can't? I can, and I am. Karen's voice was raw with desperation. I've lost everything, Marcus. My husband, my job, my future. I'm not losing my house, too. Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Karen laughed, but it was the sound of someone who'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Call them. Tell them how your inconsiderate pool has been torturing me for months. Tell them how you've been systematically destroying my life. The water level had dropped 3 feet. Marcus's beautiful infinity pool was becoming a concrete crater. Thousands of gallons of treated water flowing into the storm system. The financial damage was staggering. But what hurt more was the violation, the complete disrespect for everything he'd worked for. You're insane, he said, the words coming out quieter than he'd intended. Maybe I am, Karen replied, her voice suddenly calm. But I'm not going down alone. That's when Marcus noticed the cameras. His security system, installed after previous incidents with Karen, had been recording everything. Every word, every action, every moment of this breakdown was being captured in high definition. Karen had just committed a felony on camera, and she was too lost in her rage to realize it. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, someone else must have called them Marcus. Watched Karen's face change as she finally understood what she'd done. The pump continued its work, draining his pool and her future in equal measure. But, as the first patrol car pulled into his driveway, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Karen Whitmore had declared war, and in war, everyone loses something. The question was, what would be left when the dust settled? Officer Jennifer Martinez had seen plenty of neighbor disputes in her 8 years on the force, but nothing quite like the scene that greeted her in Marcus Chen's backyard. A blonde woman in a soaked pink tracksuit stood beside an industrial pump, her hands still gripping the machine like a lifeline, while thousands of gallons of brilliantly blue water cascaded into the storm drain. The homeowner, a composed Asian man in his 30s, held his phone steady, recording everything. Ma'am, I need you to step away from that equipment, Martinez said, her hand resting on her radio. Karen Whitmore's head snapped up, her eyes wide, with the kind of panic that comes when reality finally crashes through delusion. Officer, thank God you're here, Karen gasped, releasing the pump. This man has been harassing me for months with this ridiculous pool. I'm just trying to resolve the situation by draining my pool without permission. Marcus interjected, his voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. Officer, she broke into my backyard and destroyed my property. I have it all on camera. Martinez looked between them, assessing the situation. The pool was nearly empty now, revealing the custom tile work and intricate lighting system that had cost Marcus a small fortune. The pump continued its work, sucking up the last remnants of water with mechanical indifference. Karen Whitmore. You're under arrest for criminal trespass and vandalism, Martinez announced, reaching for her handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Wait. Karen's voice cracked with desperation. You don't understand. I've been living next to this ... this monstrosity for months. Do you know what it's like to wake up every morning and see that unnatural blue staring at you? It's psychological torture. The color of someone's pool water doesn't give you the right to drain it, Martinez replied, moving closer. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. No, Karen stumbled backward, her designer sneakers slipping on the wet concrete. I'm not the criminal here. He's the one who's been destroying property values. He's the one who's ruined my life. Marcus watched as his neighbor completely unraveled. Part of him felt a twisted satisfaction, seeing Karen finally face consequences for her actions. But another part, the part that had always tried to be the bigger person, felt genuinely sorry for her. Karen, just cooperate with the officer, he said quietly. You're only making this worse. Worse. Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. How could it possibly get worse? My husband left me for his 25-year-old secretary. My boss put me on performance improvement because I've been too distracted to focus on work. And now I can't sell my house because every potential buyer thinks your pool looks like a tropical resort threw up in a suburban backyard. The words tumbled out in a torrent. 3 years of accumulated resentment and recent trauma spilling over like the water still flowing from Marcus's pool. Martinez paused, her handcuffs halfway out, recognizing the signs of someone incomplete. Emotional freefall. Mrs. Whitmore, she said gently, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but destroying someone else's property isn't the answer. You need to come with me now. Difficult time. Karen's voice rose to a shriek. I'm losing everything. My marriage, my job, my home, and it's all because of him and his stupid, stupid pool. She pointed at Marcus with a trembling finger, her face flushed with rage and tears. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this neighborhood? I've been the HOA president for 3 years. I've organized every block party, every charity drive, every community meeting. I've put my heart and soul into making this place perfect. And then he shows up with his tech money and his gaudy house and ruins everything. Karen, there's no HOA in this neighborhood, Marcus said quietly. You know that? The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked like a lost child. There should be, she whispered. There should be standards. There should be rules. Marcus felt his anger cooling, replaced by something uncomfortably close to pity. He'd always known Karen was controlling, but he'd never realized how deep her need for order ran, or how fragile she really was underneath all that aggression. Ma'am, I really need you to come with me now, Martinez said, stepping forward with the handcuffs. We can sort this out at the station. No, Karen backed away, her eyes darting around the yard like a trapped animal. I'm not going anywhere. This is my neighborhood. I belong here. She turned and ran. Marcus watched in amazement as his 50-something neighbor sprinted across his soggy lawn in her designer sneakers, her pink tracksuit a bright blur against the green grass. She vaulted over the low fence, separating their properties with surprising agility, disappearing into her own backyard. Should I chase her? Martinez asked, one hand on her radio. She's not going anywhere, Marcus replied, pointing to the for sale sign in Karen's yard. That's her house. She's probably locked herself in. As if on cue, they heard the sound of a door slamming, followed by the distinct click of multiple deadbolts being engaged. Martinez sighed and spoke into her radio, calling for backup and updating dispatch on the situation. This is going to be a long day, she muttered. Marcus looked at his empty pool, the concrete bottom now visible for the first time since it had been filled. The intricate mosaic he'd commissioned a pattern of blues and greens that reminded him of the ocean was revealed in all its glory. It was beautiful, even without water. How much damage are we talking about? Martinez asked, pulling out her notepad. The water alone is about $800, Marcus said, running mental calculations. The pump system will need to be recalibrated, the chemical balance reset, the filtration system cleaned, probably close to $3,000 total. Jesus, Martinez whistled. Over pool water being too blue, it's not really about the pool, Marcus said, watching Karen's house for any sign of movement. It's about control. She's been trying to control this neighborhood, control me, control everything around her. And when life started falling apart, she couldn't handle the fact that there was one thing she couldn't control. A crash echoed from Karen's house, followed by muffled shouting. Martinez tensed, her hand moving to her weapon. "That didn't sound good," she said. More crashes followed, interspersed with Karen's voice screaming incoherently. Marcus couldn't make out the words, but the rage and desperation were unmistakable. It sounded like she was destroying everything she could get her hands on. "I should probably mention," Marcus said carefully, "that Karen's been having some ... issues lately. Her husband left her, she's about to lose her job, and she's been trying to sell the house for months. Mental health crisis." Martinez nodded grimly. "We see it more often than you'd think. People hold it together until one thing pushes them over the edge." The pool was just the trigger, Marcus realized. She's been building up to this for months. A second patrol car pulled into the driveway, followed by what looked like a crisis intervention team. The quiet suburban morning had transformed into a full-scale emergency response. Neighbors were beginning to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Patterson, from across the street, approached cautiously. "Marcus, honey, what's going on?" "We heard screaming and saw the police cars. Karen had a breakdown," Marcus said simply. "She drained my pool." Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened as she took in the empty concrete crater that had been Marcus's pride and joy. "Oh my word, is she ... Is she okay?" Another crash from Karen's house answered that question. The crisis team was already moving toward the front door, their voices calm and professional as they tried to establish communication. "Karen, this is the police," a voice called through a megaphone. "We just want to talk. No one's going to hurt you." The response was a stream of profanity that made Mrs. Patterson gasp and cover her mouth. Marcus had never heard language like that from his prim and proper neighbor. "She's completely lost it," Mrs. Patterson whispered. "I mean, I knew she was difficult, but this..." "Mental illness doesn't discriminate," Martinez said quietly. "Sometimes the people who seem most put together are the ones struggling the most." Marcus nodded, thinking about all the times he'd seen Karen in her perfect outfits, her perfect hair, her perfect yard. He'd never imagined the chaos that must have been brewing underneath all that control. Karen's voice suddenly cut through the air, raw with desperation. "I know you're out there. This is all your fault." The crisis team gestured for everyone to move back. Marcus found himself stepping toward Karen's house instead. "What are you doing?" Martinez grabbed his arm. "She's talking to me," Marcus said. "Maybe I can help." "Sir, that's not a good idea. She's clearly unstable. Answer me, Marcus." Karen screamed from somewhere inside her house. "You've ruined my life. The least you can do is face me." Marcus looked at his ruined pool, at the chaos that had erupted in his quiet neighborhood, at the police cars and crisis team and gathering crowd of neighbors. Karen was right about one thing: this was all connected to him, even if it wasn't. "His fault, Karen," he called back. "I'm here. What do you want?" The house went silent. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Then, in a voice so broken it was barely recognizable, Karen replied, "I just want my life back." And in that moment, Marcus understood that this wasn't about the pool at all. This was about a woman who'd built The standoff stretched into its third hour. Karen's house had become a fortress of broken dreams and shattered control. With crisis negotiators speaking through megaphones while she barricaded herself inside, Marcus sat on his deck, watching the circus unfold in what had once been the quietest neighborhood in Willowbrook Heights. "She's not responding to our calls," Detective Ray Sullivan told Marcus, joining him at the patio table. Sullivan was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much. "Her phone goes straight to voicemail. We can hear her moving around in there, but she won't engage." "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his empty pool yawning behind him like an open wound. "We wait," Sullivan said. "Sometimes people just need time to come down from the crisis. Sometimes they need to realize they're not as trapped as they think they are." "A news?" Van pulled up across the street, followed by another. Marcus groaned. "Great. This is going to be on the evening news." "Neighbor drains pool in bizarre dispute," Sullivan said dryly. "I've seen worse headlines." Mrs. Patterson approached with a tray of coffee and sandwiches. At 73, she'd appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial coordinator. "Of crisis management? Any updates?" she asked, distributing cups. "Still waiting?" Sullivan replied gratefully, accepting the coffee. Mrs. Patterson, how well do you know Karen Whitmore? The older woman's face creased with concern. I've lived here for 20 years, watched Karen move in as a newlywed. She was always ... intense, very focused on appearances, very concerned about property values. But she wasn't always like this. When did you notice the change? Marcus asked. About a year ago, Mrs. Patterson said thoughtfully. Right around the time her husband started working late every night, she became obsessed with the neighborhood, constantly calling the city about permits and regulations. She'd walk around, with a clipboard, taking notes on everyone's yard maintenance. Looking for control, Sullivan nodded. When her marriage started failing, she channeled that energy into the only thing she felt she could still manage. The neighborhood, Marcus finished, and my pool was the biggest symbol of something she couldn't control. A commotion across the street drew their attention. A man in an expensive suit was arguing with the police barricade, his voice carrying across the crowd. That's David, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. Karen's husband. Marcus studied the man who'd left his wife for a younger woman. David Whitmore was handsome in a generic way, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He was also clearly agitated, gesturing wildly at the police officers. I need to get to my house. David's voice rose above the crowd noise. I have important documents in there. Sir? That's not possible right now, Officer Martinez replied firmly. The area is secured for everyone's safety. You don't understand, David pressed. My wife is mentally unstable. She's been harassing the neighbors for months. This is exactly the kind of thing I was afraid would happen. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The man was talking about Karen like she was a stranger, not the woman he'd been married to for 15 years. Classy guy, Sullivan muttered. David's phone rang, and he answered it with obvious irritation. What? No, I can't come to the office. Right now. My crazy ex-wife has barricaded herself in our house and drained the neighbor's pool. Yes, you heard that right. No, I don't know when this will be resolved. Ex-wife. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows shot up. The divorce wasn't even finalized yet. Some people check out long before they leave, Sullivan observed. Inside Karen's house, they could hear muffled banging and what sounded like furniture being moved. The crisis team leader, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, had been trying to establish communication for over an hour. Karen, this is Dr. Chen, she called through the front door. I'm here to help. No one wants to hurt you. We just want to make sure you're safe. Go away. Karen's voice was raw and hoarse. I'm not safe. I'm never going to be safe. Can you? Tell me, what would make you feel safer? Dr. Chen asked patiently. I want my life back, Karen screamed. I want my husband back. I want my job back. I want that stupid pool gone. Marcus winced. Even in crisis, Karen kept coming back to his pool. Karen, I understand you're in pain, Dr. Chen continued. Losing important things in our lives can feel overwhelming. But you're not alone. There are people who want to help you. Liars. Something crashed against the inside of the front door. Everyone's a liar. My husband lied. My boss lied. Even the real estate agent lied. David, still on his phone, across the street, rolled his eyes dramatically. She's completely unhinged, he said loudly enough for the gathering crowd to hear. This is why I had to leave. You can't reason with someone who's lost touch with reality. Mr. Whitmore, Detective Sullivan called out, approaching the barricade. I need to speak with you. David ended his call and strutted over with the confidence of someone who believed he was the victim in this situation. Detective, I'm glad you're here. I've been documenting my wife's erratic behavior for months. I have videos, recordings. Witnesses, sir, Sullivan interrupted. Right now, I need information that might help us resolve this peacefully. When did you last speak with your wife? 3 days ago, David said dismissively. She called me screaming about the pool again. I told her I was done dealing with her obsessions and hung up. The pool. Sullivan glanced back at Marcus. She's been fixated on it for a while. Months, David confirmed. She'd stand at the back window with binoculars, taking pictures. Making notes. She called the city 17 times, trying to get it declared a violation. She even tried to organize a petition to ban non-standard pool colors in the neighborhood. Marcus felt sick. He'd known Karen was upset about the pool, but he'd had no idea how deep her obsession ran. Did she threaten to take action herself? Sullivan asked. She threatened a lot of things, David said. Most of it was just crazy talk. Though she did say something about fixing the problem permanently if no one else would help her. And you didn't think to warn anyone? David shrugged. I thought she was just venting. Karen's always been dramatic. Mr. Whitmore? Sullivan's? Voice took on a sharp edge. Your wife is having a mental health crisis. She's facing criminal charges, potential jail time, and complete social isolation. Did it occur to you that she might need professional help? She's not my responsibility anymore, David said coldly. I filed for divorce 4 months ago. Whatever she does now is her choice. The divorce isn't final, Mrs. Patterson called. Out from Marcus's yard, you're still married, David Whitmore, and that woman in there is still your wife. David's face flushed. That woman destroyed our marriage with her paranoia and control issues. I tried to help her, but she wouldn't listen. To reason. You mean she wouldn't listen when you told her you were sleeping with your secretary? Mrs. Patterson shot back. The crowd murmured. David's affair was apparently common knowledge in the neighborhood, except to Marcus, who'd been too focused on his own life to pay attention to the gossip. That's not relevant, David said stiffly. It's completely relevant, Sullivan replied. Your wife's mental state deteriorated after discovering the affair. She lost her anchor, her sense of identity, and fixated on the one thing she thought she could still control. So this is my fault. David's voice rose. I'm responsible for her draining someone's pool. You're responsible for abandoning someone in crisis, Marcus said quietly, finally speaking up. You're responsible for walking away instead of getting her help. David turned to glare at him. Oh, that's rich, coming from you. You're the one who built that eyesore pool in the first place. I built a legal pool on my own property, Marcus replied evenly. You destroyed a 15-year marriage, David. Karen's voice suddenly cut through the air, high and desperate. David, is that you? The crowd fell silent. David's face went pale. Don't you dare leave me again, Karen screamed from inside the house. Don't you dare. Dr. Chen seized the moment. Karen, David is here. Would you like to talk to him? Karen's voice broke. I just wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted to fix everything. I wanted to make the neighborhood perfect for us. David looked like he wanted to disappear. The crowd was staring at him, waiting to see what he would do. His phone rang again, and he actually reached for it before Detective Sullivan caught his wrist. Your wife is asking for you, Sullivan said quietly. What kind of man are you? David stared at the house where he'd once lived, where the woman he'd promised to love and honor was falling apart. For a moment, his mask of indifference slipped, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something that might have been shame. Then David straightened his tie and stepped back from the barricade. I'm the kind of man who knows when to cut his losses, he said, and walked away. The crowd watched in stunned silence as David Whitmore got into his BMW and drove off, abandoning his wife in the middle of the worst crisis of her life. Karen, Dr. Chen called gently. Karen, I'm still here. We're all still here. But the house had gone silent, and Marcus had the terrible feeling that Karen had just watched her last hope drive away. The siege was about to take a very dark turn. The silence from Karen's house stretched for 23 minutes. Dr. Chen had tried everything gentle coaxing, direct questions, even playing music through a portable speaker. Nothing. The crisis team exchanged worried glances as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the suburban battlefield. Marcus found himself pacing his deck, unable to sit still. Something had shifted in the atmosphere after David's departure. The house felt different, not just quiet, but ominously still, like the eye of a hurricane. This isn't good, Detective Sullivan muttered, joining him at the railing. When they go silent like this, it usually means they're planning something. Or they've given up, Marcus said quietly. Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. A new commotion erupted across the street. A taxi had pulled up, and a young woman in a business suit was arguing with the police barricade. She had Karen's bone structure, but softer features, and her eyes held a desperate urgency that cut through the crowd noise. That's my mother in there, she was saying to Officer Martinez. Please, I need to talk to her. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but you don't understand anything, the woman's voice cracked. My mother called me this morning, sobbing about losing everything. She said she was going to fix the problem once and for all. I drove for Hours from Chicago because I was afraid she might, might. She couldn't finish the sentence. But everyone understood. Mrs. Patterson hurried over with tissues and a gentle arm around the young woman's shoulders. "I'm Jessica," the woman said to the gathering crowd. "Karen's daughter. I know she's been difficult lately. But she's not a bad person. She's just in pain." Detective Sullivan approached carefully. "Jessica, I'm Detective Sullivan. When did you last speak with your mother?" "This morning at 6 a.m., Jessica replied, wiping her eyes. "She was hysterical. She said Dad had ruined everything, that she was going to lose the house, that everyone in the neighborhood hated her. She kept talking about some pool being the final insult." Marcus felt a stab of guilt. He'd been so focused on his own property rights that he'd never considered how his pool might have symbolized everything. Karen felt she'd lost control over. "Did she say anything specific about her plans?" Sullivan asked. Jessica nodded miserably. "She said she was going to restore order one way or another. She said if she couldn't have her perfect life, she wasn't going to let anyone else have." There's either the implications of those words settled over the crowd like a cold fog. Marcus looked back at his house, suddenly seeing it through Karen's Isa, symbol of everything she'd wanted and lost. "We need to get her talking again," Dr. Chen said, approaching the group. "Jessica, would you be willing to try communicating?" "With your mother, of course," Jessica said immediately. "Anything?" They moved to the front of Karen's house, where Jessica's voice carried clearly through the afternoon air. Mom, it's Jess. I'm here." The silence stretched, then barely audible. "Jessie, yes, Mom, I'm here. I came as soon as I could." "You shouldn't have come." Karen's voice was thick with tears. "You shouldn't see me like this. I love you, Mom. I don't care what you've done. I just want to help." "It's too late for help," Karen replied. "I've lost everything, your father. The house, my job. I even lost my mind and attacked the neighbor's pool like some kind of crazy person." "Mom, people make mistakes when they're in pain. Dad leaving you, losing your job, that's not your fault, isn't it?" Karen's voice turned bitter. "I drove him away with my need for control. I got fired because I couldn't focus on anything but that stupid pool. I attacked an innocent man's property because I couldn't accept that my perfect life was a lie." Marcus felt the weight of her words. Karen wasn't just having a breakdown, she was having a moment of terrible clarity. "Mom, you can get help," Jessica pleaded. "We can fix this together." "Some things can't be fixed, sweetheart." Karen's voice was getting stronger, more resolved. "Some mistakes are too big to undo." Dr. Chen grabbed her radio. "I need the tactical team ready," she said quietly. "She's in the resolution phase." "It could go either way." "Resolution phase?" Marcus asked. "When people in crisis make a decision about how to end their situation," Sullivan explained grimly. "Sometimes they decide to surrender and get help. Sometimes they decide to escalate. And sometimes," Dr. Chen added, "they decide to make sure everyone else suffers too." As if summoned by her words, Karen's voice suddenly rang out clearly. From inside the house, "I know you're all out there," she called, the whole neighborhood, watching the crazy lady have her breakdown. "Well, I hope you're enjoying the show, Karen. We're here because we care about you," Dr. Chen responded through her megaphone. "Care about me?" Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Where was all this care when I was trying to maintain standards in this neighborhood? Where was it when I was organizing every community event, every charity drive, every effort to make this place special?" "Mom, people appreciated what you did," Jessica called out. "No, they didn't." Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "They tolerated me because I was useful, the uptight neighbor who handled all the unpleasant tasks. But the moment I needed support, the moment I needed someone to understand why that pool was destroying everything I'd worked for, where was everyone then?" Marcus felt the accusation hit home. How many times had Karen tried to talk to him about the pool? How many times had he dismissed her concerns as just another unreasonable complaint? "I tried to tell you," Karen continued, and now she was clearly addressing Marcus directly. "I tried to explain that your pool was ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I tried to be reasonable, but you wouldn't listen. None of you would listen." "I'm listening now," Marcus called back, surprising himself. Now Karen's voice turned incredulous. "Now, when I'm facing criminal charges and my life is completely destroyed, now you want to listen. I should have listened before. Marcus said, stepping closer to the house. I should have tried harder to understand what you were going through. Understanding doesn't fix anything, Karen replied. Understanding doesn't bring back my husband or my job or my dignity. Understanding doesn't make that pool any less of an eyesore. Mom, please, Jessica pleaded. Come outside. Let's talk face to face. I can't, Karen said, and her voice broke again. I can't face you after what I've done. I can't face any of you. The house went quiet again, but this time it felt different. More final? She's making a decision, Dr. Chen said urgently into her radio. All units, be ready to move. That's when they heard the sound of breaking glass from inside the house. Gas line, Sullivan said grimly, recognizing the distinctive hiss. She's trying to fill the house with gas. Oh God, Jessica gasped. She's going to blow up the house. Not just the house, Dr. Chen said, looking at the proximity of the neighboring homes. A gas explosion that size could take out half the block. Marcus stared at his house, at Mrs. Patterson's house, at all the homes where families lived there. Quiet suburban lives. Karen wasn't just trying to destroy herself. She was trying to take everyone down with her. We need to evacuate the area, Sullivan said, already moving toward his radio. Wait, Marcus said suddenly. Let me talk to her. Sir, that's not advisable. She's doing this because of my pool, Marcus interrupted. This whole thing started because I wouldn't listen to her concerns. Maybe she'll listen to me now. The hissing sound was getting stronger. In the distance, sirens wailed as the fire department raced toward the scene. Time was running out. Karen, Marcus called out, his voice carrying over the chaos. You want to destroy the pool? Fine, you win. I'll fill it with concrete tomorrow. The hissing stopped. You think I'm that stupid? Karen's voice was cold and hard. You think I'm going to fall for empty promises now? Not a promise, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. I'm calling my pool contractor right now. I'm going to have him come out and permanently destroy that pool today. The house went silent except for the distant sound of approaching sirens. Marcus held his breath, wondering if his desperate gambit would work. Why? Karen asked finally, her voice barely audible. Because you're right, Marcus said, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest. It's just a pool. It's not worth someone's life. It's not worth destroying a neighborhood. It's not worth any of this. Another long silence. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. It's too late. The gas line hissed back to life, and Marcus realized that Karen Whitmore had moved beyond reason, beyond negotiation, beyond saving. She was going to take them all down with her, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it.